The map revealed only a remote point, almost forgotten amongst the oceanic coordinates. The island appeared as a green smudge surrounded by dark water, ignored by seafarers and dismissed by cartographers as territory without importance. Dense vegetation covered its interior, whilst rocky headlands formed natural barriers around its perimeter. There were no human settlements, nor traces of ancient occupation. The scientific teams that registered it did so through bureaucratic obligation. It was an environmental preservation area, protected by law and isolated by geographical choice. For years, the island served merely as a reference point for marine studies. Flocks of migratory birds landed there during their annual routes, taking advantage of the abundant vegetation and absence of predators. Rangers visited the location occasionally, verifying compliance with environmental regulations. It was during one of these routine visits that the first strangeness emerged, a constant, heavy silence that seemed to swallow any natural sound. Camera traps recorded disturbing images, birds standing still for excessive periods, gazes fixed towards the ground, behaviors that escaped known patterns. Field notes accumulated without apparent explanation. One researcher, whilst reviewing the records, murmured to himself, "It wasn't an ordinary island." The preparation was meticulous. 120 birds were tagged with state-of-the-art transmitters, devices capable of recording body temperature, heartbeats, and geographical coordinates with millimeter precision. The objective was straightforward: track migratory patterns and better understand the island's use as a rest stop. The landing proceeded without incident. The transmitters indicated full health in all individuals, stable vital signs, expected behavior. Then, without warning, one transmitter lost its signal. The team, monitoring remotely, attributed the event to an isolated technical failure. Minutes later, another signal disappeared. Then 3 more followed. The sequence accelerated in alarming fashion. Over the course of a few hours, dozens of transmitters zeroed their readings simultaneously. The team decided to return to the island the following day, expecting to find bodies, scattered feathers, signs of violent predation. Nothing. The search revealed an absolute absence of evidence. There were no carcasses, no traces of struggle, no tracks from unknown predators. The soil was intact, the vegetation unaltered. When they consolidated the data, the discovery shocked even the most skeptical researchers. 70% of the transmitters had ceased their functions at the same time, without apparent reason, without logical explanation. A new experiment was organized, another batch of birds, new transmitters, more rigorous observation. This time, the team remained on the island, documenting every movement. The birds landed, and almost immediately their behaviors deviated from normal. Short circular flights replaced territorial exploration. Individuals isolated themselves, refusing interaction with the flock. Physiological alterations became visible: extreme agitation, wide eyes, erratic head movements. The transmitter data showed sharp drops in device energy, always during the same period of the day. The pattern repeated itself with disturbing precision. The collapses occurred just after dusk, when natural light began to diminish. During these events, radio interference became intense, making clear communication between the team impossible. The environmental silence intensified in an almost palpable way, as if the island's very atmosphere rejected any sound vibration. The conclusion was inevitable. These weren't random events. There existed a consistent pattern, an invisible mechanism that operated with temporal regularity. The island wasn't merely hostile, it was methodically lethal. Scientific hypotheses multiplied. Unknown predators were considered, but ruled out by the total absence of organic traces. Soil contamination emerged as a possibility, however, chemical analyses revealed no toxins in dangerous concentrations. Geologists proposed subterranean gas emissions as the cause, suggesting that invisible vapors could disorient or kill the birds rapidly. Each theory was meticulously compared with the collected data, and each revealed fatal inconsistencies. To validate or refute the hypotheses, the team replaced the transmitters with military-grade models designed to resist extreme conditions. The failures persisted. The new equipment, supposedly interference-proof, behaved in the same manner as the previous models. The conclusion was frustrating. No hypothesis thus far explained the totality of the phenomena. Something deeper, more complex was operating. Rangers began reporting physical symptoms following visits to the island. Intense headaches appeared without apparent reason, accompanied by nausea that persisted for hours. Some described a heavy silence, a sensation that the air itself absorbed any attempt at sound. Professional microphones positioned at various points recorded almost nothing, only minimal background noise, insufficient to explain the visible ecological richness. The local fauna, normally abundant on preserved islands, appeared strangely scarce near the coast. Small mammals, reptiles, and insects seemed to avoid certain zones, creating deserted areas without ecological explanation. Drones sent for mapping lost signal in specific regions, falling in abrupt drops or simply disappearing from radar. Regular visitors began reporting a growing sensation of pressure in the chest, as if the very act of breathing required additional effort. Ground vibration measurements revealed atypical oscillations, varying without apparent meteorological or geological pattern. The perception consolidated. The silence wasn't merely an environmental detail, it was a symptom of something far more disturbing. The concept of infrasound gained prominence in scientific discussions. Infrasound refers to sound frequencies below 20 Hz, undetectable by the human ear, but capable of affecting living organisms in profound ways. Documented cases showed how infrasound caused disorientation in animals, inexplicable panic in humans, and even failures in complex biological systems. The decision was made: install specific infrasound sensors on the island. The first results were promising. The equipment detected consistent vibrations below 20 Hz, varying in intensity according to changes in wind and atmospheric pressure. These invisible waves, theoretically, could explain the reported symptoms and the birds' collapses. However, anomalies persisted in the data. The readings were strong but inconsistent. Some measurements showed extreme peaks without correlation to environmental events. Others registered complete silences at moments when the phenomenon should have been active. The provisional conclusion was clear. Infrasound was the most plausible theory, but definitive proof of direct causality was still lacking. The series of electronic failures became impossible to ignore. GPS devices gradually lost precision, indicating wrong locations or simply freezing. Cameras switched themselves off, deleting recently recorded video files. Magnetic compasses spun without reason, pointing to random directions that changed every minute. Digital notes stored on tablets disappeared without technical explanation. One drone suffered sudden interference during a reconnaissance flight, losing altitude rapidly and colliding with the coastal rocks. Subsequent analyses revealed uncommon heating in internal cables and circuit boards, as if external energy had been forced through the systems. Measurements showed that the island's soil apparently absorbed vibrations and energy from machines, draining batteries at accelerated speed. The psychological effect on the team was inevitable. Growing fear replaced scientific curiosity. Operational caution became mandatory protocol. The island revealed itself to be hostile not only to birds, but to any technological instrument, severely hindering the obtaining of direct and conclusive evidence. Unofficial accounts began to circulate. Rangers and local residents, reluctant to speak openly, shared disturbing experiences. One ranger described having heard a deep hum coming from the ground, as if something gigantic was breathing beneath the surface. Another affirmed that the island breathed in slow, deep fashion, expanding and contracting in imperceptible cycles. One forest guard abandoned his employment following an episode of severe disorientation, reporting having completely lost his sense of time and space for 2 hours. Fishermen from the region avoided the area through superstition, but also through practical fear. Nets cast near the island frequently returned empty, as if marine life also fled from that point.